Namaste, YouTube. It's your favorite bad boy of yoga with another video blog here. And I got to thinking about relationships. I was thinking about student-teacher and really just growing up and maturing in life. And I'm balancing this subject of faith with certainty, you could say, or logic. You know, faith, the substance unseen, that you're so certain something will happen, but there's no evidence. And then there's the logic of step A, B, C, D gets you all the way to Z and beyond. And certain philosophies would say that some things are just outside of reason, beyond reason. And I don't buy into that. I think that's a slave mentality. At some point you give up. I understand there's shortcomings to language. There's shortcomings to, human activity. We're limited in our senses and, what can we see into the future, into cause and effect. But I don't think there's a limit. I just think we have personal limits that we push beyond. So then it wasn't really a limit, it was an illusion. And there's pros and cons to both of this faith versus logic. We're growing up in a society now that's becoming very globalized. There's a lot of sharing of information. There's a lot of censorship of information. Just go to my Instagram, you won't see shit because unless you prioritize it, because I'm censored. Facebook, I'm censored. China, they're censored. They can't get information out. What we have from inside China is leaked, and the people that leak it, bad things happen to them if they get caught. All sorts of things. It doesn't have to be like government corruption, even though it's all government corruption, because that's why there's any censorship. It's only the government that can do that. So there's we grow up in this society where there's so much information and there's so much corruption. Like the sharing of information revealed how much localized, you could say, censorship was going on, where there was tyranny. And so that's good. So we learned to stop maybe buying stories so easily, because it's really, there's a public portrayal, an image, a story that goes with it, when really the facts, when they come out, ends up making more sense, and it also paints a picture of evil and corruption. So we stopped, and then there's so much disillusionment in religion, and which comes from this globalization, seeing other points of view, and it makes more sense. And then the coercion and force that was imposed on us to inhibit us from changing our views makes us question, like, why is that what you have to do? Can't you convince me? And so there's good to like the logic. However, it's slow. The matrix of human consciousness, so many layers, as an analogy, because it's not really layers, but they do, words there's homophonic meanings, meaning like there's two or more meanings for the same sound, for example. So you end up you can go in many directions with double speak, and that's really how legalese and, which is the jargon or the specialized vocabulary of the legal system, the judicial system, which is really what society is built on, modern society. So there's so much complexity to the mind, even though the mechanics of how and why the mind works maybe is relatively simple. It's energy, symbols, nervous system, and it all interacts like life experience. It lays down a pattern, and that becomes your subconscious. I actually just explained it really well right there. The mechanisms are not so difficult. That's like saying gravity is the attraction or whatever. It's a simple law. But then how do you use it? How do you overcome it? How do you get to the moon is a complex problem, even though gravity is pretty simple, like things pull together based on their mass and distance. So the other side is just faith. I believe in the end result. I don't need to understand all the steps to get there. I'll just do as I'm told, or I'll do as it's shown, or I'll do as my heart tells me to. People, this is common in the spiritual community. The heart doesn't talk, by the way. The heart can't tell you shit. Your emotions don't tell you shit. It's your mind. You get it? It's your mind interpreting sensations. That's all words are anyway. This is a sensation of compression waves through the air, which is sound, and you're interpreting it. If you didn't know the language, your mind would make noise of it. And so then I'm not telling you anything. I'm just, it's just noise. Okay. So faith can get us far, but it can also get us far in the wrong direction if we believe in the wrong thing. And that's where everybody has bruises of being duped by wrong beliefs. And there's always the risk, right? Like this woman, I forget her name. She's a teacher, owner of, shout out, Body Electric in Tampa, or St. Petersburg, Florida. And she said, even though it's, I think, an old saying, it's up to the student to separate the wheat from the chaff. And the chaff, C-H-A-F-F-E, I think, is like the waste material of wheat. Wheat is a plant, and I think the seed, it's a seed inside of a bunch of, leaf or whatever. So you have to remove all the leaf, and that becomes the chaff. So to the student to find the goodness and discard what doesn't serve or is not timely, it's not contextual to their life. So that's the logical approach. The problem is you'll end up having many teachers, and they'll have different beliefs, and they're steering you in multiple directions. So it's a long, arduous journey of you making sense of it yourself, but personal experience is biased. And that's why when I talk about like relationships, or I don't have a book here, but these books on like evolutionary psychology and the differences between men and women, and they may be flawed too, just like all science is flawed, but your opinion, your personal opinion, is much more flawed. My personal opinion is much more flawed than a book with an analysis of hundreds of thousands of individuals across cultures, across time. It's like, that's giving a more accurate point of view of men and women. And what you're saying is actually the cultural construct. And that's just the truth of feminism. It's wrong. It's off code, and it's killing the world, really. It's a cancer. So I could go more into that in another video. I don't need to right now. Although this applies really to relationships, because what happens is a girl doesn't want to commit herself to a single guy because she's been duped, and she cuts off other ties, which the fact is, if you're pretty, the guy has not cut you off. Even if you told him to fuck off, I don't want to talk to you anymore, I have a man right now, leave me alone. 2 years later, 3 years later, when you text him and say, that guy, that other boy, he was just controlling and wanted me to do that, all of a sudden the guy will accept you back. You never really cut off a guy. So the resistance to doing that when you're in a relationship is pretty pathetic. Unless this other datum, which is that you literally have a biological clock that you can't have kids at it, so your beauty is fading, so your mating potential, your dating potential, your value basically in the dating marketplace declines, right? So your dating prospects go down, and that's literally what's going on there. That's the urge, that's the biologic urge to not cut off guys, but the more mental, spiritual is that he could mislead you really far in the wrong direction and give you wrong behaviors. The problem to your fulfillment lies in the opposite. And I know that I'm giving a bunch of opposites, but that's what needs to happen. You need to neutralize the charge of either or opinion, and then the end result is find a teacher or find a man or both. But, which if you're a lady. So, the opposite of being duped is when you have a lot of male friends and a lot of male guidance. And if you don't, then you have female guidance who herself has male guidance. You're getting guided by a man somewhere along the chain. And if you have a completely female lineage, then you're probably not sexual, and you're a monk. And that has its own drawbacks, its failures, because how can they tell me anything about relationships when they can't have a relationship themselves? It's a flawed model. You're incapable. So what advice would you have for me? You have great advice for being alone, but that's not what being human is. Okay. So having multiple male references or multiple guides, their philosophy of life, which is just their communication, is, let's say you could fast forward it and see where it ends up, they're all going in different directions. Their philosophy leads to many different ends, and you're piecemealing it together, and it's going to lead to no end. Now, what is the end? The end is fulfillment. That's as far as I can see. The end is fulfillment and a rapid personal evolution that makes a person immaculate at communication and resolving miscommunications, which so many psychosomatic ills, so many conflict, violence, is miscommunications. It's misunderstandings. And what the power of the group is much more than the individual. And if you can organize people, this is what makes us dominant on this planet. So communication becomes the key. When it comes to learning communication, You can collect a bunch of different ideas, but you should have an example that you consider a teacher until you move on. You graduate maybe to another teacher or whatever happens. But that one at a time aspect is invaluable and will really bring a lot of order to your actions. So this is what I'm saying to you. Obviously, I watch other people's YouTube videos too. So I have a teacher, but I watch other people's YouTube videos. Maybe you're watching this YouTube video, but you have another teacher. Maybe you don't have a teacher. Maybe it doesn't matter to you. I'm just talking about, what I'm talking about. And I hope you got something from it. So subscribe, tune in for future videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Yogi Chris saying namaste.